We love to talk about the fashion, history, and latest news about the royal family, but keeping its members safe requires a lot more work than most people think. Today, we're going to talk about some of the unsung heroes, the bodyguards, who are working to keep the members of the royal family safe. You might be surprised by the lengths they go to in order to protect their charges. We'll get some behind-the-scenes secrets from some of the people who've been charged with keeping Princess Diana, Prince Charles, and even the Queen herself safe from harm. When it comes to hiring the best of the best in security, the royal family spares absolutely no expense. But in addition to their highly trained security force, many seemingly innocuous palace positions also require some degree of security knowledge. Being a royal nanny is a tough job with tons of qualifications, one of them being self-defense training. It may sound a bit overzealous, but it makes sense if you think about it. These nannies often spend time with the smallest and most vulnerable members of the royal family, so they need to learn how to protect their charges in case of an emergency. And you thought having to get your CPR certification was a pain? You might be thinking that the royal family asks a lot of their nannies, but even the family members themselves need to undergo training. That's right, all of the royal family members undergo self-defense training and learn what to do in case of an emergency. One of the biggest threats facing these family members is kidnapping, so they are trained on what to do in case of such an emergency. If their security force should fail, they will be all on their own and need to have some idea of what to do in a kidnapping scenario. When Meghan Markle joined the royal family, many people were interested in seeing how her wardrobe would change to adhere to the royal family fashion rules. But besides learning how to curtsy and when to put on a tiara, she's also had to learn some important lessons about security. That's right, even the Duchess of Sussex had to be put through vigorous training scenarios. According to sources, these scenarios are realistic and can be downright terrifying. But as scary as they are, it's important to know what to do in these situations and be able to put them into practice. TMZ claims that Meghan even went above and beyond by hiring Matt Fiddes to teach her martial arts and self-defense prior to her wedding to Prince Harry. Fiddes was the bodyguard for the late Michael Jackson and was a close friend of Princess Diana. So if the members of the royal family themselves need to go through this sort of training, you can only imagine what's involved if you want to be a formal bodyguard for the royal family. As we mentioned earlier, the children of the royal family are particularly at risk. When Prince George and Princess Charlotte head to school, it's with a full force of security. They take different routes to school every day on a seemingly random schedule. This may seem like a lot of effort to schlep some kids to school, but this method has been useful more than once. Hassan Rashid has pled guilty to ordering various terrorist attacks, including one at the school Prince George attends. Prince George was also the victim of a stalker who showed up at his school, thankfully, while the prince wasn't there. In both of these incidences, nobody was hurt, but they're still terrifying to think about. And it's no wonder that Prince William and Kate Middleton insisted on extra security for their son following the incident. Now, in addition to escorting the prince to and from school, security stays there with him during the day as well. According to some reports, each member of the royal family has no less than 5 armed guards around them at all times, and the children are no exception to this rule. If you're wondering just where these security guards are when you see photos of the royal family, the answer is that in most cases, you can't see them if they're doing their jobs. Sure, there are some security agents who operate in plain sight, and it's hard to miss their motorcades, but for the most part, security officials wear plain clothes in order to blend in with their surroundings. They might be wearing simple suits, but discreetly tucked away are weapons, a radio, and a first aid kit just in case. Security officials are expected to train with a variety of weapons, but are also experts at unarmed combat, and whether it's their primary duty or not, they all take special driving lessons. No, we're not just talking about learning how to parallel park. These bodyguards learn advanced driving techniques which would come in handy during any sort of car chase. Even simple things like walking inconspicuously in formation and event management cannot be overlooked. No matter how simple a royal outing looks to onlookers, there are a ton of strategic security maneuvers going on behind the scenes. In addition to learning how to inflict damage on opponents and protect their charges, there is even more to bodyguard training than you might think. We mentioned earlier that bodyguards carry first aid kits on them, and that's because they also receive training in life-saving measures. Should something really catastrophic happen to the royal family, the bodyguards need to be knowledgeable in first aid practices so they can dispense potentially life-saving care to their charges. Being a bodyguard is about protecting life, whether it's by using a weapon or bandaging a wound. Simon Morgan has guarded Prince Charles and Queen Elizabeth herself at various times in his career. He claims that during stressful situations, most people experience 3 stages of conflict: fight, flight, or freeze. Most of us like to think we would know how to react in a stressful or frightening situation, but the truth is that we simply don't until we're actually in one. So part of the bodyguard training involves putting recruits through harrowing experiences in order to ensure that freezing is not an option. They must then be able to assess the situation and determine if flight or fight is what's called for. And although members of the royal family receive training, it's nowhere near as extensive as their security team. If a situation occurs, you can't rely on your charges telling you what to do. It might sound strange that people could totally freeze up in a scary situation, but according to Morgan, it happens all of the time. So if a royal family member seems rooted in one spot, it's up to their bodyguard to get them to safety. Not only do bodyguards need to manage their own reactions, but they're responsible for other people's reactions as well. Young children such as Prince George and Princess Charlotte are in particular danger when going to and from school, but this time can be a hazard to adults as well. Members of the royal family are at their most vulnerable when arriving or leaving a location. Not only is this a particularly scary time, the security force has to choose between either getting them into their vehicle or trying to get them back inside the building. There are a ton of factors which go into making this call, and they only have mere moments to decide. You can definitely see how there's no time available to freeze in one of these life or death scenarios. While you see members of the royal family smiling and greeting fans, the security force is all business. They need to be aware of every possible thing that could go wrong on the short walk to or from a building. With this in mind, royal walkabouts are particularly stressful for the bodyguards of the royal family. During these times, members of the royal family enjoy chatting with their adoring public, and vice versa. This is all well and good for them, but if you have safety on your mind, it can be frightening. Simon Morgan claims that nothing less than constant vigilance is acceptable, and it's often a relief when the royal family finishes up and gets back in their vehicles. Bodyguards must constantly be scanning the crowd on the lookout for anyone or anything which could represent a threat to the royal family. So just what are they looking for? Basically, the biggest thing to be on the lookout for is anything out of the ordinary. Seeing someone wearing a thick winter coat during the holiday season may not be noteworthy, but what if it's summertime? Heavy coats could be used to conceal weapons, so security is always on the lookout for these types of things. According to Morgan, it can be tough to keep an eye out for all of these little things, but after years of training, it becomes second nature. He also notes that the royal attitude towards security is different than in other countries. The British royal family is all about being as discreet and unobtrusive as possible. While other clients might want to show a force in order to deter potential threats, that isn't how this family does things. Today, when we look at the royal family and their bodyguards, it seems impossible to imagine that anything could sincerely threaten them. But palace security overwent a major overhaul in 1974 following a terrifying ordeal. That year, a man named Ian Ball attempted to kidnap Princess Anne and hold her for ransom. Although the princess escaped unharmed, many others were wounded while trying to protect her. This incident showed that the royal family was not immune to tragedy and that more strict security measures were needed. But not everyone is pleased with the new direction palace security is heading in. Ken Worf was a bodyguard for the late Princess Diana, and he claims that since 2011, security spending has been reduced by 20%. It's hard to put a price on protecting the royal family, and according to Worf, that's a mistake. When he was employed by the royal family, he believed that forming a personal relationship with his charges was integral for protecting them. Not only does it give bodyguards additional motivation, but learning about their charges makes it easier to predict their actions and ultimately keep them safe. By hiring a greater number of employees for shorter shifts, Worf believes the royal family is doing itself a disservice. According to Worf, bodyguards should have the opportunity to build relationships with their charges and their fellow security personnel in order to operate as effectively as possible. Secrecy is a huge part of being a bodyguard for the royal family. And yes, they even use code names for various things and for members of the family. It was once discovered that their security forces referred to Prince William and Kate Middleton as Danny Collins and Daphne Clark. Both of the names have the initials DC, which are a nod to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. And then we have Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who are known as David Stevens and Davina Scott. The DS of the initials represents the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. But of course, like all good codes, this one was changed before it went public. An important part of security is switching things up so outsiders can't figure out what you're up to. Becoming predictable is the first step toward becoming complacent, and that's when things can go terribly wrong. There are also plenty of benign threats that most of us would probably never think of. Food and drink can easily be contaminated, so it's not uncommon for members of the royal family to bring their own. Prince Charles and Camilla are known to bring their own alcohol, so they don't have to worry about consuming anything tainted by mistake. Their bodyguards carry along alcohol with them in case their charges want a drink. And in case you're wondering, Camilla opts for red wine, while Prince Charles favors a gin and tonic. Even when the royal family heads out on vacation, their security team doesn't get to rest. They're expected to travel with their charges and keep them safe wherever they go. What do you think about the security measures in place to keep the royal family safe? Do you think it's way too much or just enough to be practical? Tell us what you think in the comment section. And then click on the subscribe button to get access to the latest and greatest videos from us here at The Taco. We'll see you next time.